Well, good morning to you, St. Luke's. This is a big day. Our series in January called Our Unwritten Story has been a lead up to today when I share the work of a group of people who met through a good bit of 2021 contemplating the future vision of our church. This was something the governing board had asked them to work on and to develop. And I'm going to be sharing that in just a minute. In fact, I'm going to do a lot more reading today than I typically do because the information is important. And I want to make sure I'm accurate in getting it relayed to you as well as I possibly can. But let me start with a quick story, or at least I'll make it as quick as I can. One I shared with our winter summit at the beginning of the month about my sabbatical 20 years ago, the one and only sabbatical I've taken in my career. As a part of it, I had the chance to kind of live a bucket dream, which was hiking in the Alps in Zermatt, Switzerland. Before going, I studied a lot of different hikes that looked interesting, ones I would like to do. And one of them included a guided hike to one of the glacial peaks in the area called the Brighthorn. It sits among a stunning range of 4,000 plus meter peaks, of which the Matterhorn is one of them. Now, when I got there, I learned how much it cost to do a guided hike up to the top of the Brighthorn. And my budget was more like the free hike range. So I was looking at all this information, sitting at the dinner table in my hotel one night, and my waiter was this, young, strapping 20-something German guy who does a lot of climbing in the area. And I asked him about it. I said, I'm thinking about doing a guided climb of the Brighthorn. What do you think? He said, dude, and he sat down. I didn't even know Germans knew that word. Dude, you don't need a guide. It's easy. You take the gondola up to the ski area, and you just hike to the top of the Brighthorn. That's all you do. So my budget and I took this as a sign from God. After the dinner, I was headed back up to my room. I passed the front desk where the woman who ran the hotel was standing. And she had kind of a maternal instinct to make sure that all of her guests remained alive as long as they stayed at her hotel. So she asked me, are you climbing the Brighthorn? How in the world did she even know this? I said, well, yeah, in fact, I am thinking about doing that. She said, you'll take a guide, right? And I said, well, Johann was telling me, and she cut me off. She said, you don't listen to him. You listen to me. Last summer, 3 German boys thought they could climb the Brighthorn without a guide. They got caught in a storm and they died. You will take a guide. Promise me. Who's ever heard of a hotel owner saying, promise me? But I promised, and I figured it was for the best after all. I mean, it would be a bummer to die when you're on sabbatical. So the next day I went to the local climbing shop, signed up for a guided group climb to the Brighthorn, and they gave me the paperwork to sign. They had a series of questions that I found unusual, asking me about my eyesight. Do I have trouble focusing on objects at a long distance or short range? Do I ever experience double vision? Well, I never had, so I didn't think anything about it until we were on the final ascent going to the top of the Brighthorn. We were on this narrow 6-inch wide path that followed a ridge up to the top. And the drop off, both sides of the path, was just treacherously steep. And as you're walking on this path, you're tied to people in front of you and behind you. Your eyes have this funny sensation where they're trying to focus on objects a long way down, 1,000 feet off, and focus on that path right in front of you. And for the first time in my life, I got this sense of disequilibrium, I guess double vision. And it started to make me dizzy. And when you get dizzy, you get wobbly. And people who are tied to you at 14,000 feet take exception to wobbly hiking partners. Our guide explained all of this could happen. And if it does, he said, just cup your eyes so that you focus only on your next steps. He said, definitely do not look up and try to take in the scenery of the mountain range that's miles and miles away. That'll make it worse. He said, we'll stop, we'll take in the scenery, but when we walk, you focus only on your next steps. I learned an important motivator and sustainer of mountain climbing in that experience. You must have something to aim for, something that makes you look up, that lifts your head, that inspires you to risk and dare and attempt. But you never get there without focusing carefully on the next steps and paying attention to what is immediately before you. This is what that verse in Proverbs reminds us. Without vision, the people perish. We have to have something that inspires us. But happy are those who keep the law. Another way of saying that is happy are those who focus on their steps of obedience. So that's why I'm calling today's vision message Double Vision, because this is going to be a year of looking ahead at the big vision peaks toward which we believe God is calling St. Luke's to scale, while at the same time focusing on the present steps of ministry in front of us. This past year, our governing board appointed a group composed of leading staff members and an equal number of lay members of the church to work with a strategic planning organization called Auxano for the purpose of defining our future vision. The CEO of Auxano, Jim Randall, was our consultant. And what I want to do for the remainder of this message is three things. Number one, explain the process we used, share what we identified as our future vision and strategies, and then look at the immediate steps needed this year. There's an outline you can use to write down the key information. If you're watching online, you can find that in the chat and just click on that to access the outline. A diagram helps us picture the unique 1-4-1-4 process which Auxano uses in strategic planning. You can also learn all about their process in a book called God Dreams that is authored by the founder of Auxano, Will Mancini. It begins with the Beyond the Horizon vision, a picture of God's preferred future for the church at least 5 to 20 years out. In other words, it's beyond the horizon. Next, you identify the 4 3-year background strategies or areas of focus that will be most important to accomplishing this vision. Then you get to the next 1-4, the mid-ground vision that focuses the work of the church for the coming year, and the 4 foreground initiatives or 90-day goals that will be renewed each quarter. Interestingly, the metaphor Auxano uses is mountains. The far peaks that you see in the picture, almost out of range, are the beyond the horizon vision. The closer mountains are the background strategies. Then the near hills are the mid-ground vision, and the road in front of you is the foreground initiatives. So let's start with what we developed as the Beyond the Horizon vision statement. We envision St. Luke's as an explosive force of God's radical, just, and inclusive love, reaching hundreds of thousands of people in Indianapolis and beyond who have given up on church or the possibility of a God who cares about them. Now just sit with that for a minute, because this statement contains much. First, the character and spirit of our congregation, a force of God's radical, just, and inclusive love. Not a mild force, but an explosive one. This is a force we must be energized to release and to make known. We also speak in terms of hundreds of thousands. Obviously, this is not talking about people in the pews, but people who can be influenced by St. Luke's. COVID has made us aware of how far our reach can be. The pandemic has helped us experience the evangelistic scope of John Wesley, who said, "The world is my parish." Each week, we now have more than 3,500 people watching a service, joining a class, or downloading material online. And as many as 8,000 a week connect with us through some form of social media. And then we've clarified our target audience, people who have given up on church or the possibility of a God who loves them. This describes the fastest growing spiritual group in America. Those who say they are spiritual but not religious. We want to help people experience a church that is not narrow, exclusive, or condemning, but is spiritually alive and hopeful. Now, to carry out this ambitious dream, we identified 4 background strategies that will be crucial to our work ahead. They are these: city impact, equipping disciples, inclusive expansion, and multi-site launch. We have teams in each of these areas working with pastors and staff leaders who are developing specific goals and directions. I want to share those with you, at least what we have developed up to this point. City impact means we will seek to relieve the suffering and improve the lives of our neighbors living in greatest need and greatest risk. We've identified 4 key aspects. Increase the impact of our current 4 outreach initiatives: housing, education, food insecurity, and justice, with a goal of serving 10,000 people and deploying 250 new volunteers. Number 2, launch a Freedom School this June for 100 students, in which 85% or more retain or improve reading levels in order to dismantle the preschool to prison pipeline. To do this, we will need 250 volunteers. Number 3, raise $100,000 for a Hope Center that helps 1,000 families in poverty. One leading indicator of family crisis is having diapers for babies, and we heard something about this one of the Sundays back in Advent. We want to provide 500,000 diapers for families in need, which will identify further ways we can offer wraparound services to help families out of poverty. Now, to do this, it brings us to number 4, to train and deploy 75 Hope ambassadors who connect with these families and therefore connect them to resources that are available and thus decrease the infant mortality rate. The next background strategy, equipping disciples. This means moving people beyond just attending church activities to experiencing genuine life transformation by living out their faith as fully engaged followers of Jesus Christ. We will help build on the work of the last 10 years of engaging people in small groups by offering clear pathways for spiritual growth, faith sharing, serving with our gifts, and developing leaders. Our aim is to involve 2,500 people in such practices. To do this, we will create a connection team that personally connects people with attenders to St. Luke's to help them get better involved in the life of the church and take next steps in their discipleship. We will also create a team to identify, train, and equip new leaders in the church who represent the diversity of our congregation and our community. Our goal is to help people live lives that look like Christ and to make disciples who make disciples. Third, inclusive expansion has to do with our worship and hospitality and evaluating how well these welcome the diverse populations around us and what unintended obstacles there might be. Our goal is to increase our worship attendance by 10% by June of 2024. To do this, we will conduct a series of listening sessions to engage all voices in the church in evaluating ways our services can appeal to greater numbers of people of all ages, races, and spiritual needs. We want to understand any ways our services and fellowship experiences prevent others from feeling that they belong, and thus consider ways to help everyone feel safe, included, and inspired so that we can reach those who have given up on church or the possibility of a God who loves them. Finally, multi-site launch means we will consider ways to extend our reach beyond our current geographic location. We believe this will look like a number of things. First, this spring we will launch a digital campus that better connects the hundreds of people who join us online and do not have ability to connect with us in person. COVID has already extended our reach nationally, as I mentioned a moment ago. We'll develop intentional ways to engage our online community with discipleship practices. Our plan is to get at least 1,000 people who are connecting in some way online to take a next step of involvement. We have a team of people defining measurable steps that will tell us if we're making progress and what engagement specifically means for an online community. We also plan to identify microsites of St. Luke's, gatherings of people in communities where folks are joining us online and where we might connect them in person for fellowship, study opportunities, and mission activities. An example of this could look like a mission event that we do here in Indianapolis and then replicate it in places where we have St. Lukers watching us, like in Fort Wayne and Evansville and other locations. People where folks right now say, St. Luke's is my church. We hope to have 3 microsites launched this year. Also, we feel called to consider new physical campuses of St. Luke's. Most specifically, our governing board has accepted an invitation by the Central District to adopt Broad Ripple United Methodist Church. In recent years, this faithful but declining group of members has struggled to keep their church going. They approved by overwhelming majority for St. Luke's to take possession of their building. Now, this proposal was actually something that started in 2018 when the district superintendent brought this idea to us. We put together a team to study the pros and cons of the invitation. We even met with leaders of Broad Ripple Church under the leadership of our district superintendent over a 6-month period to study together a book called Better Together, looking at churches that work with and adopt other congregations. After a nearly 2-year process, we were ready to make an official proposal, and then COVID happened. We simply put everything on hold while Kevin Davis provided pastoral leadership to that community and serving as one of our congregational care pastors. This past year, the DS asked us to pick up the conversation, and after renewed analysis by our discernment team, they recommended to the governing board that we go forward, and our governing board approved. We now have a team working on a strategy to establish Broad Ripple as another location of St. Luke's United Methodist Church. Brad Kalajanan, founding pastor of Cornerstone United Methodist Church, the largest in the Michigan Conference, is consulting with this team on what our strategy will be. Why would we consider such a move? First, it's because we were asked. This is an opportunity to maintain a United Methodist presence in an important growth potential part of our city. Our agreement with the conference is not just to adopt Broad Ripple, but commit to injecting new energy into that church with our St. Luke's DNA, a church with a passion for helping others find and give hope through Jesus Christ, but in a context of an open, inclusive, welcoming congregation for all. I'm excited about this possibility. Broad Ripple is a popular, busy, commercial, thriving district that attracts people from all over the city. This is a great opportunity to extend the presence and the reach of St. Luke's, and with the resources, spirit, and passion of our church, I am confident we can do this. I've been in contact with colleagues of mine who have launched similar multi-sites to ask what their experience was like. Reverend Lisa Yabua is the pastor of a satellite location of Edendon Street United Methodist Church in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is one of the largest churches in that conference, and after being on staff several years, they sent Lisa to begin Southeast Raleigh Table. They also started another new campus with another pastor, and both of those are sites within 2 miles of the main church. Lisa said this came about because of a visioning process in 2009 when the church committed simply to do what they felt God wanted, not what they wanted. When Lisa went to start this new campus location, some members, she said, felt a sense of loss. But she told me, if you ask all of these people today how they felt about that, they would say, it's the greatest thing they ever did. They see the people these campus locations are reaching. People who, despite how close they lived to the Eatonton Street Church, realized they would have never come there. And they celebrate being a part of an undeniable work of God. I love one thing that Lisa said to me particularly. She said, this decision helped the church exercise its spiritual muscles. They had gotten used to doing comfortable things that met the needs of people in the church, and it reawakened them to the daring faith they just hadn't exercised in a while. In Oklahoma City, my friend Bob Long has been the pastor of St. Luke's United Methodist Church for 25 years. Several years ago, they responded to opportunities to establish new locations. A new one in Edmonds now worships 500 to 700 people. Another existing church they took over in an underserved part of town did not make it as a congregation, but to their surprise, it became a new location of their St. Luke's missions hub. And they've been shocked by how God has used that. Here's one example. Their meal mobile distribution at the time in which they took over this campus location was averaging 5,000 meals a year. Now, with the local county officials coming and asking them to help do the work of getting food to hungry and needy people around the city of Oklahoma City, that has expanded to 250,000 meals served each year. In both of these situations, the overall attendance of the churches has grown by 50% since they started the satellites. Such an action here at St. Luke's is not a new idea. We did this in 1995 when we started the garden. And like I mentioned last Sunday, this is the way we began. A group of people from Central Methodist downtown left with the blessing of that church to start a new congregation on the north side. And this is how God works. God is a God who satellites. God comes to where people are so that they can know and experience God's love. God reaches out doing whatever's necessary to connect with people. So the idea of multi-siting is very much in line with our own practices and beliefs. Now, I want to pause here because I know this is a little bit like drinking out of a fire hose. I am throwing a lot of stuff at you real quick. But if you've been taking notes, I want you to look at that, and I want to offer you the opportunity right now to give us your response about what you think of all of this with that grand beyond the horizon vision. And I want you to respond to a few questions. And to do that, you're going to need a smartphone. If you're watching right now here in Robertson Chapel, there's a QR code that you'll see on the screen. And just point your phone at that, and you'll be directed to a website that gives you these questions and options. If you're watching online, that link is provided in the chat. Just click on that. It will take you to the same location. We want you to respond to two questions. The first is this: which of these four background visions do you think will be most significant in helping us reach greater numbers of people who have given up on church or the possibility of a God who loves them? Just click on the one you think. City impact, equipping disciples, inclusive expansion, multi-site launch. Of course, we believe all of them will, but maybe there's one that's standing out to you. One you say, I do believe to do that. This one's going to be most important. Click on that, and you can begin to see the tallied responses of how everybody is responding to that question. Let's just take a moment to see how those come in. Now let's look at the next question. Which one of these do you have the most questions about? I raced through them, I know. And maybe there's just one particular area that you say, boy, I want to understand that one better. Which one of these do you have the most questions about? City impact, equipping disciples, inclusive expansion, multi-site launch. Right now, just take a moment to click on that. Now, as I pointed out earlier in my mountain climbing story, you can't move forward and look up at the distant peaks at the same time. You have to turn attention to your next steps and what's immediately in front of you. And so now we go to the next 1-4. Our mid-ground vision for this year in front of us, and then the 90-day goals or the foreground initiatives. Our 1-year mid-ground vision, which we now are already halfway through, is You Belong. Between now and this July, we want to re-engage over 6,000 members and current attenders and reach out to 1,000 new people with the radical love of Jesus. As people slowly return to church engagement, we want everyone to know that they belong at St. Luke's and that God has a purpose for them. And then some of the foreground initiatives, which we've already been working on, include things like maximizing our Christmas concerts as re-engagement events, which has been or was last month super successful. Over the 3 concerts, along with the attendance here at St. Luke's and the online people who viewed, we had over 8,000 people watching our Christmas concerts, more than we've ever had in our history. Also, we're working on a database cleanup to get accurate information on every member and keep current with all St. Lukers on their needs and their concerns. Looking ahead, the foreground initiatives for this current quarter are these. A 5-3-1 initiative in Lent. You're going to hear more about this in coming weeks. We want every active attender at St. Luke's, which is around 2,000 adults, to pray for 5 people who do not have a spiritual family. Invite 3 to St. Luke's events and bring at least 1 new person to a St. Luke's Easter service in person or online. If we do this, then over the 40 days, we will have prayed for over 10,000 people and invited 6,000 folks to an event and brought 2,000 people to an Easter service. Also, town halls. We will be offering town hall events to get feedback from members on this long-range vision, which you're hearing today. We want this to be a time to re-engage St. Lukers in the life of the church and to follow when these town halls will occur, to sign up for them and learn about other associated activities with this long-range vision. You can go to this website, youbelongindy.com. That website will take you to a page at our website at St. Luke's that is devoted to learning about our long-range vision. Then Lent invite events. We'll have events like a big gospel concert in March and an Easter egg hunt that makes for a great opportunity to invite families, as well as the Holy Week services, other special services in Lent, town halls, outreach events that will be occurring. Lastly, a building feasibility study. We are assessing the needs of our facility here at 100 West 86 and what will be needed to provide vibrant ministry for the next generation. Again, I know this has been a lot, but let me add a couple more things in closing. First, what I have shared here is not inclusive of all ministries and efforts in St. Luke's. These are just events related to our future vision, but we hope this will bring focus and purpose to all of the events which we're doing. We will still give emphasis to being an inclusive church. Please hear that. We will still work on anti-racism efforts and pour into our minority business incubator. And we will keep working to make our United Methodist Church fully inclusive of LGBT members. We will still have an emphasis of reaching young families, children, and youth. That does not go away. We set that as a priority 9 years ago, and we will continue to seek to reach the next generation. And we will continue to support our many outreach partners and international ministries in Kenya, Haiti, and Sierra Leone. Now, did I say it's easy? Absolutely not. God doesn't call us to easy land, but faithful land. Does it cause a disequilibrium to look at events that are beyond the horizon while carrying out the everyday responsibilities? Absolutely. That's why this message is called Double Vision. It's disconcerting at 14,000 feet to get dizzy. But I can tell you there's nothing like standing at 14,500 feet and staring eye to eye with the Matterhorn. When you get to the mountaintop, the dizziness goes away. So let me share in closing 2 emails with you. One is from Linda Arendt, a St. Luke's member, who heard this vision described at our Winter Summit weeks ago. Linda is a founding member of St. Luke. She was baptized at Central Methodist Church, which you can see in the picture. And her parents were part of that original group that started St. Luke's. She's been here her whole life. She said, "When I think about where our church is and where we hope it will go, I think if my parents could see what St. Luke's has become, they would be so very proud. We must continue to take risks while also remembering where we came from. I am so grateful for this church." And then finally, this is an email I received from a person who first connected with St. Luke's online this year and shared with me in a recent email sharing her appreciation for our openness and aliveness. "Hi, Pastor Rob. My story explains what St. Luke's has done for me. I grew up the youngest of 5 children living in Williamsport, Indiana. Our family was poor but loving, and I would describe my upbringing as wonderful. Every Sunday, my parents would dress us up, me and my siblings, for church and Sunday school. The church we attended was in Attica, Indiana, when my mother's sister and her husband attended. On Saturdays, my father managed a pool hall in Williamsport, and one Saturday, he talked the guys in the pool hall into attending church with us the following Sunday. It was then we discovered our church was not a welcoming church. My aunt and uncle were furious that we would bring those type of people to their church. So therefore, our church going came to a sudden stop. Although I believe in our Lord and read the Bible, I didn't think I needed church. The pandemic changed all that. I began watching your services online in early 2020 and began just recently coming to St. Luke's in person along with my husband. You taught me that St. Luke's is an all-inclusive, all-welcoming church that changed my whole way of thinking. I want to thank you for giving me the community of church back. We look forward to becoming members. Happy New Year." I don't think that person is alone. I think there are many others just like her who just don't know yet that there is a church like St. Luke's. But we're going to tell them, and we're going to welcome them. So let's close with one last activity. I want you to come up with the word that this vision does for you. What describes the way you're feeling right now? What would be the descriptive word that captures this vision? Once again, if you're watching online, you can click a link in the chat that will send you to a place where you can type that word, and we're going to get to see the words that we're all putting in this on the screen. If you're in the room, go to the QR code you see on the screen right now. And when you get to that link, type in the word that comes to you. And let's just close by seeing our words.
Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to Thee. at the